Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ed Hodson and I'm the Vice Chair of the IOSH Railway Group, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all members and the guests to our first virtual railway conference. As our workforce continues in these difficult times, providing essential services for both passengers, freight and infrastructure in challenging circumstances, we must continue our safety evolution and continue learning lessons for the future. Mind the Gap, our conference theme, is a familiar mantra when boarding and alighting trains, although Covid-19 is probably one gap that none of us would have placed on our horizon scanning maps before now. But how are we doing minding the gaps in other areas? Are we reducing the risk at the passenger train interface? The derailments, such as in Sheffield last week, recent SPADs and braking incidents, and critically, track safety, as highlighted in the latest RAAB report last week. So while the magnitude of COVID-19 is in the fore, we must be mindful to the familiar risks as we return to hopefully pre-COVID capacity. We may remember the Williams review in the distant past and the gap about the train public performance and the expectations of putting passengers first, and whether that could be delivered without any detriment to safety. We're looking at software. Can the technology keep the gaps between the trains and increase the capacity when COVID finally goes away? And finally, do we have the leadership capability to increase a positive culture in our industry to support both occupational and mental health and safety for the industry, and to move us off our safety performance plateau? Hopefully these questions will be answered in our conference in the next 3 days. We do have a safe railway, probably the safest in Europe, but we must always be mindful to continue our improvement. So our virtual conference will aim to look at the gap analysis to see what we need to do to identify risk control, what good practices we need to consolidate our success, and improving leadership capability will without doubt support our challenges. This will ensure our continuous improvements in all matters of health and safety, but we are adaptable to change, as COVID-19 has shown us. So once again, welcome to our virtual group conference, the first one, and I'd like to introduce our first guest, Ian Prosser, CBE, Her Majesty's Inspector of Railways. Ian is an executive member of the ORR and responsible for the work of the Railway Safety Directorate, which strives to ensure that we all manage safety risks effectively and, of course, comply with our statutory duties. Ian has worked in safety critical industries for almost 40 years, delivering improvements in safety and quality. Ian graciously accepted his honorary Vice President appointment to IOSH in 2011 for his contribution to improving railway safety. So I'd like to welcome Ian to open our conference and the challenges of COVID-19 and beyond. Ian, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Just check. First off, hope in this difficult year, wish everyone well, and thank those that are doing key worker roles in both this industry and others to keep the country going. And we've kept the railways going all the way through this difficult time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges of COVID-19, but also focus very much on beyond. As we go into the future, we will have some challenges that we have today and we will continue to have. And at the end, I'll also talk quite a bit about mental health. So going forward, the structure of my presentation. I wish I was with you all, because it's a lot easier to do these things in the flesh, in my view. But what I will do today is go through. I'm going to reiterate our long-standing vision and goal that we've had since I've been in this role, which is now over 12 years. So that's quite a long time. I'm going to talk about managing the response to COVID-19, the short-term response, the medium-term issues to address, the 4 key challenges for the sector going forward that I see, that I presented in my annual health and safety report earlier this year in July, and briefly touch on mental health and the million-hour challenge, because I think mental health is going to be critical for us all going forward. So, our vision and goal. When I first took on this role in 2008, which is some time ago now, as I mentioned, I did actually go to my interview and set out what I thought we should have as an organisation, as a regulator, a vision and a goal for the GB rail sector, so that we could actually give some sort of leadership to the sector and have a real vision and inspire the sector to move forward, and also inspire my own team and the OR as a whole, so that we could take the industry to another level. So I set out a vision at that time of 0 industry cause fatalities and ever decreasing risk to passengers, the workforce and the public. And we have made progress, although very sadly and tragically, we've seen incidents like Sandylands and Carmont in recent years. So that shows us that we must be really vigilant and really not take our eye off the ball, because we actually did achieve that vision in 2015-16. So it is very important that that year we had, in that financial year, we had no workforce fatality, but that was the first time ever. But we've seen repeated problems with track worker safety, and I'll talk more about that later. But to achieve this, I set a goal, because a vision is one thing, but to achieve it, I set a goal of excellence in health and safety management and risk control. And when I set that out, people were saying, well, you just want to gold plate things. But it's certainly not about gold plating. It's about trust. It's about doing things right first time. And it is about not having over complex processes and procedures that make it difficult for people to follow a safe way of working. So it's really keeping things straightforward, having trust, having great communication between the top and the bottom of organizations. And what is most important of all is to show that you care, and that there's a caring attitude. And I'll talk more about this later when I talk about health. But I was also asked at the time, well, how do we know where we are if you're talking about excellence? So not long after, we developed what we called RM3, and can help the industry measure where they're at. And what's been really pleasing about this, which we relaunched the model last year, is that we have an industry-wide program board, which has helped us develop it further, which has been really pleasing to see that it's been adopted across the sector now, and we've even produced a version that's out for consultation for the heritage sector. So which was very small companies or very small volunteer organizations can help improve their safety as well. So RM3, just to recap, and most of you might be well aware of what it's like. This is a simple slide. Unfortunately, we have a very complicated slide, but it doesn't really work very well over broadband. It is a simple, straightforward plan, do, review type model, really. It's based on policy and then competence and worker involvement through to implementation and review. So it's about really just understanding where you're at in those important areas. And there's 5 levels, from ad hoc 1 to excellent 5. But more and more, it's important not to actually get too hung up on the scores, because it is about continuous improvement. It is about understanding where you are and sharing where you are. I have seen good sharing taking place between talks in the same owner groups and also between regions now in Network Rail. So understand where you might be better or worse than someone else so that you can actually continuously improve and learn from each other. Because what it's really about is a conversation. It's about having those conversations to actually improve on a continuous basis health and safety performance. And they can understand and develop safety improvement plans that attack your weaknesses, but building on your strengths, because there are strengths in all organizations. So it's about sharing where those strengths are with others as well. So it's primarily continuously having that conversation. And we have our conversations with the duty holders, and they're now having conversations within organizations, which helps develop and continues to improve. And as we come out of the COVID situation, we will need to look at where we're at and how we can continuously improve. Because there's no question about it. Certainly in my lifetime, I've never experienced anything like we have done in the last few months. Tragically, people obviously have lost their lives before their time, and it has been a difficult time, not just for those that have suffered from the virus, but also many others who have either lost their jobs or have fallen ill through other diseases. So it's been a difficult time for the country and for the railways. But as I said earlier, we have kept the railways going, which has been vital for both key workers in the first few weeks after the lockdown, but also continuously now that we are there for school children and for students, etc., and for key workers that need to go to work. Many hundreds of thousands and millions of people are working in their workplaces every day and need to get there. So we worked very hard to work with the industry to actually make sure that we stepped up and worked quickly to help the industry deal with this pandemic. We worked very strongly as a key part of what was set up by the industry, which was the Rail Industry Coronavirus Forum. This involved all the trade unions and all the of Network Rail and the train operating companies were involved. It was set up in March, involving industry leaders and the trade unions, as I say. Its purpose was to engage at a senior level to support the collective industry response to the impacts of the pandemic. And has been shown, and it is still operating, how beneficial that has been to pull all parts of the industry together in a collaborative way so that we can support each other and give clear guidance and communication to the front line who are still there day in, day out to actually support them and make their workplace safe. So ours has been a key and active participant throughout, and critical areas worked on through RISIV have been developed principles of operation through the pandemic, which we worked with our colleagues both on the trade union side and from the companies involved. We worked particularly well, and RSSB did a great deal of follow-on work to enable in-cab driver training to take place. And other important areas when the guidance moved from 2 meters to 1 meter plus, and the use of face coverings, what types, etc., and how to deal with all of those issues. A lot of this was done at very fast moving pace, things being changed quite quickly. Some of the guidance not necessarily always clear coming from government to start with, so we helped, and of course we had different advice from different governments at various times as well, so that there was a complete way of making sure that the front line knew what was expected of them and what we were doing to make sure they were safe as possible. The guidance we issued a range of health and safety related guidance. We also work closely with our colleagues in other health and safety regulators, particularly HSE in the early days. We've regularly reviewed this and updated it, and then have a special posting on our website that you can find it easily. So we've we found significant cooperation in drafting and agreeing the content. Some of it done very quickly. Guidance issued covers things like medical fitness and the competence standards, which had to be used and addressed in changing circumstances because of the need of for example, delaying some medicals. Additional guidance relating to licensed train drivers and periodic medical requirements, as I just said. Engineering standards, requirements for periodic inspections and maintenance, work with Network Rail in those areas to help continue to maintain a safe railway, but to improve and change some of the standards for a period of time. Some of those will probably be adopted longer term, as they've shown to be more practicable. Practical guidance for on-train, tram and station activities. Riddle reporting in relation to COVID. And also very important, we supported the heritage sector on resuming their operations. These in particular have through this period suffered very significantly from a financial point of view and from the fact that they're very much volunteer or led organizations. So they have struggled, but many of them did resume operations in the summer safely and provided that pleasant service in a very well managed way in my reflections on what I saw to help them get through this. So it's all, as I mentioned previously, reflected different national requirements across England, Wales and Scotland as necessary. And things did move, sometimes very quickly, which made it very important to be fleet of foot. So I believe through those 9 months, we have worked very closely with all parts of the industry, with our trade union colleagues to ensure that the environment that people are working in is safe and the environment for the passengers is safe in relation to the restrictions that obviously are in place. That has meant capacity has been reduced on trains, but however, with face coverings now obviously mandatory, and that was something that changed sort of during the last few months in June, and the fact that the huge amount of effort has been done on the trains in terms of cleaning. So going forward, what are some of the medium-term issues to address? We need to maintaining those regimes that are making rail travel safe and complying with social distancing guidelines. Great amount of cleaning, the provision of sanitizers, for example, at stations, making sure that people are wearing face coverings, all those things that are making travel safe today. But we need to keep that momentum and keep those going until obviously the government's guidelines change through either a vaccine or for other reasons going forward as the virus diminishes. But in the meantime, we must maintain all the hard work that's going on, and then demonstrate and communicate to the public that it is safe to travel. And by demonstrating and explaining very clearly what we're doing to ensure that. There's also a lot of work going on now with universities, both the TfL and for the DfT have commissioned quite a lot of work to look at what is going on in relation to public transport, measuring and seeing if you can actually find any COVID on trains. So far, that has been, as far as I'm aware, not been found. Work on going on in regards to air conditioning and HVAC systems, for example. That is ongoing. Will take some time, but will demonstrate that we can make things even better. So there's a lot of ongoing continuous improvement activities so that we can secure a long-term future for the railway, which is vital as it is going to be key in one of the great other long-term challenges we face, which is that of climate change, which I'll talk more about later. Railways can play a huge and important part in decarbonisation going forward, which is something that we have now in the country, some very strong targets placed out there for decarbonisation. So the railway has a long-term future that is secure, and things like HS2 are still going and moving forward. So we have to work at these medium-term issues collectively and together, and the government is supporting that with research, for example. Because we've had a period of time, and this is just a simple representation, where railway safety performance has improved, but it has plateaued in the last few years. And we've seen these issues arise. We've seen a huge improvement in safety at level crossings, for example, with the risk, which is the light green down there, reducing by about half in those in about 10 years. But we have seen an increase recently, in recent years, in the issues of earthworks relating to very often large and unusual heavy rainfall, what we call sort of quite significant weather impacts. And so we need to focus on a number of areas going forward, because we've seen things like Croydon, for example, which was a huge shock to us all, where the human factors aspect of managing and running a railway, whether it's light rail or mainline railway, is very, very important. And understanding fatigue, for example. So there are still a number of areas that we need to continue. As mentioned earlier, and just a few days ago, RABE issued their report on the Margam tragic fatalities. And so track worker safety is still an issue. Network Rail has actually done some really good stuff since we issued the improvement notices in July last year. But no, there have been still are too many near misses when working in and amongst trains. And we still see some serious construction injuries. So there is still more to do with regards to worker safety, particular track worker safety. And we're helping and supporting Network Rail with its very significant task force that now is finally addressing this issue, a lot of which is cultural and a lot of which has been there despite lots of efforts previously to try and change and improve this, which really came, as Margam showed, didn't get to the bottom of the issues. That therefore this is very important. In the next 2 years, this is finally sorted out, and it will go on longer because it is a cultural issue, but it is something that's so important to make our railways not just safer but more efficient as well, in terms of maintenance in particular. Major infrastructure failures for civils. Sadly, the example of Carmont just recently has demonstrated the need for Network Rail to accelerate its plans in terms of dealing with adverse extreme weather events. And what's particularly important is to address the issues of drainage. Drainage in some ways has been a bit of a Cinderella of the assets, although we enforced a few years ago on asset register of critical drainage. There's still work to do in this area as we see and understanding water flows and water management as we see these events will become more and more common. We still mention public fatalities at the interface with the railway. Level crossings, as I mentioned, has improved significantly with a record low number of, sadly, of 2 fatalities last year, but still a number of near misses. And we've seen an increase in the amount of trespass during the summer, which probably has been impacted by various lockdowns, etc., with young people going onto the railway. something that tragically obviously sometimes is very fatal. Issues in managing change and its impact on people. This is going to be really important going forward as we have to change things we do and we manage our way out of the present crisis. So, what are some of those key challenges, those 4 that I mentioned, which I went through at my annual report this year? First and foremost, it's about supporting our people. They are often the last line of defense. They are there, whether it's the train driver or the track inspector, they are there to actually make sure the railway is safe every day of the week. And their performance is key to achieving that. And that's why that's so important that we support our people. Both with important at the present time in handling COVID-19, but beyond, because there's going to be some real challenges as we try and get the railway back up and running to nearer to the use it was had before the pandemic took hold. So it's going to be important to support people as we make changes and bring in new technology, for example, in the future. And so therefore the culture and behaviors are so important, and real focus on health management. I can't emphasize this enough, and particularly mental health as well as physical, because I have always believed that if we can demonstrate through good occupational health provision and good mental health management, which includes help when required, we will show people that we care. And if we show people that we care, we are more likely to actually get that engagement, much more likely to get that engagement that's going to be needed. And we've seen during the pandemic some really good engagement between staff and management and the trade unions, so that we can make and come out of this crisis with a better railway and a better managed workforce, because a healthy workforce is a safe workforce, is an efficient workforce for us all, every one of us. And so that's why I believe it's so important that we really focus on the health management. And I was so pleased and congratulate John Housel and the team, John Housel of Network Rail, Regional Managing Director Southern, and the team around him, mainly a lot from RSSB, that put together the Rail Wellbeing Alliance and ran those 2 days of virtual conference just a couple of weeks ago, or less than that now. So that was a huge step forward in my view, in terms of demonstrating that the industry is really now getting behind improving health management and mental health as well as physical, because it is so vital, and it is really going to benefit us, not just from a health point of view, it will benefit us all from a safety point of view, but it also benefit the industry from an efficiency point of view, because we lose a lot of money, hundreds of millions of pounds a year through ill health in this industry, and it's something we are behind other sectors, and it could be really improved to actually make all our lives better, because we don't actually probably know the true real cost of poor health in our sector. The next key challenge is technology. We can use technology so effectively to actually create what I call that extra barrier, increase the defense in a cost-effective way. It can also take out the need for human interaction as well. But we do need to take the human interaction into account. There are lots of developments ongoing. We can take risk and hazard away from individuals using technology. A good example of that is the automated track inspection that Network Rail now uses, and remote condition monitoring, so that they don't actually physically have to go out and see and check the equipment. So as long as it's important that we take the individuals into account, as we change working practices to make sure that we get the human interface right, because there will be greater automation, greater technology advancements in the future, but we need to make sure that human interface is right and take everyone with us, because in the end it's going to benefit everyone, and it's so important to make the railway both healthier, safer and more efficient going forward. The next challenge, and this was one that I really formulated a little bit before the pandemic, but I still think it applies, and that's pressure on the system, because we had been seeing obviously the system itself congested and up to capacity. But I still think it applies, because very much there's going to be there's lots of change. The impact of COVID itself has put pressure on the system in a different way, but also puts pressure onto people. And, you know, it is something that has impacted us all. So it is putting pressure on the system. As I've mentioned already, we have an aging infrastructure and climate change. This is putting pressure on our system to maintain it on an ongoing safe basis. We've seen that with extreme weather, as we saw in February this year, and we saw again some very serious weather interactions in August. There will be and always is financial strains which put pressure on the system and the external environment, and this will change because of COVID. You know, we will need to. One of the things that we did before, or just around the time that we went into lockdown as a country, we had done some work on what people, passengers, actually thought was the risk to them traveling on the train. And the thing that came out, which wasn't a surprise really, but from the survey work that we did, was that it's now very much around their well-being. And this was before COVID, their well-being, because they had, you know, things like stress, the congestion, crowding, and delays, etc., impacted their health and well-being. They're also concerned about, even then, about the cleanliness of trains. So it's going to be important that we address the pressure that will come to actually show that we're worried about the well-being and the importance of looking after the passengers' well-being, not just their safety, because they feel the railway is basically safe, but they had some issues around their own well-being. And so the fourth and really key one, because we're going to be in a changed environment going forward for a long time. You know, we have climate change. We have, I believe, need a robust and strategic plans for electrification, modification of train dispatch. There's alternative fuels as well that are coming along, and other big changes on the horizon. So we need to manage these in a way in which we do it in planned form, so that we don't have ups and downs, peaks and troughs, and that we have quality and realistic plans that are properly and quality risk assessed, so that we have good risk assessments. And safety risk assessments are done right at the onset of a project, or so that we actually can eliminate risk in a cost-effective way. We achieve a LARP in a sensible way, so that we have then done that upfront thinking, that safety and health by design, health and safety by design, so that we have really quality plans going forward that will deliver what we want to be delivered in a strategic way. So finally, I just want to do a little bit of a plug. This is particularly now, and I do, you know, really emphasize the need to focus on mental health going forward. And one of the things that I think can help going forward particularly next year, will be to build on our million-hour challenge, which we did launch 18 months ago now. Obviously, has had a bit of a pause during the pandemic, not complete pause, but a bit of a pause, because the Samaritans are still going strong in their support of people that need it. But some of their training has slowed down, for example. But the million-hour challenge was all about actually doing two things. One was building on the successful partnership between the rail industry and the Samaritans and providing help to the Samaritans in what is becoming an increasingly, their services being increasingly pulled upon. You know, they receive a call every 6 seconds now in this country. But also the thing was about improving our own mental health and actually talking about mental health much more in the workplace, because volunteering for an organization like Samaritans, not necessarily just the Samaritans, but things like Calm, actually is shown through research to actually help the mental health and understanding of mental health inside organizations. Because what it does is it brings that alive, and it brings the small talk saves lives into the workplace, and people talk about it much more openly. There's less of a taboo. So people are picking up on learning from each other, and therefore picking up early signs or issues that may be taking place in the workplace. As only, just 1 in 10 tell their managers. So this is all about trying to help us raise the profile and understanding of suicide across the rail industry, its causes, and what measures can be taken to reduce potential suicides. The rail industry has done a huge amount in terms of frontline staff being trained by the Samaritans to identify vulnerable people, and that has saved many, many lives. But we're still seeing, tragically, suicides happening on the railway in significant numbers. But finally, it will also aims to reduce the stigma and improve openness regarding mental health, emotional well-being, stress, anxiety, and suicide within the rail industry. Because if we can remove some of those stigmas and some of the taboos, we can actually help us all improve our mental health. So thank you very much. In conclusion, I'd just like to say a few words, because it's all about managing risk of the complete system, and that includes the people in the system, looking after their health and well-being and their safety, and ensuring and designing that human interaction and safety into all we do. And then we will get both efficient and safe solutions. Measure how we're doing with RM3, because that is about driving for excellence in the key enablers in what we do. Improving our risk models, and we can use technology again that's developing, and RSSB are starting to do some quite interesting and thoughtful and helpful work in the area of artificial intelligence, etc. But let's really focus on our people, the culture and health, including mental health, bringing them along with us during this significant time of significant challenges and change, particularly since COVID-19. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy if we can work it all out to take questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Ian. That was probably broader than most of us probably would have anticipated in the challenges, because it really fits in with the theme of our programme, and that some of these things such as track safety and technology will be part of the theme over the next few days. I do have a few questions, if you wouldn't mind, and the first one relates to COVID-19. We've seen problems with complacency in the public and in general being publicised lately, and is there any difficulty on the different networks between, say, commuters and the intercity type trains, where there seems to be more control with the passengers and making sure that everyone had a booked seat, whereas the turn up scenario on the commuter lines, is that a problem or anything that we could be looking at?
Well, we every week the industry gets together and looks at what's going on the network on a call on a Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. And we also have RISIV every 2 weeks, which where the trade unions bring any issues. In the summer, we did see some hot spots, but they were sort of quickly dealt with in terms of either crowding or crowded trains or crowded stations. There was one or two in London, in the east part of London, but they were addressed. One of the things that's interesting is the BTP's sort of surveillance of face coverings shows it's actually on commuter trains that it's more, people are more compliant, and particularly around London. And I've noticed this myself because what I've done during the whole pandemic is make sure I've been out on the railway, even in April, and there was really not very many people on the railway at all. But one of the things I've noticed is that, and this is, people are being tackled by both the BTP and in a positive way by staff at stations, is that as you go further out of London or the big cities and into some of the more rural areas, the compliance is lower. But the trains are very, as a whole, the trains, even the commuter trains, and I've been into London to King's Cross and to Liverpool Street, are quite sparsely populated. So it's not difficult to actually maintain the social distancing. But it's something I think we've managed quite well as an industry. But we've only peaked in sort of the end of August at around 35 to 40% of what was the normal loadings before the pandemic started. So the railway, even then, and it's being used less today, down below 30% now, is still quite lightly loaded compared with previous usage before the pandemic.
I have another question, but I think you may have answered this quite well. Are you confident with the current cleaning standard of our trains in view of COVID?
Yes, I think the industry's done a huge amount. And what they're also trying to do, and you've seen the work that's publicised on the news, the work that TfL is doing on the tube with the Imperial College, is to gain more and more understanding about the virus itself and how it may be present or not, as the case may be, on trains or in ventilation systems. But as we learn more and more about it, I think we can communicate what we're actually doing in terms of keeping the trains clean, using these chemicals that destroy, kill the virus, and maintain sort of the use of face coverings, which, although it wasn't on the agenda at the beginning of the pandemic, certainly seems from the research that's been done to have a positive impact in reducing the risk.
Okay, and I've got, it's based on the RAVE report that was issued on the track worker, a subject you mentioned, that even despite Margan, there was another fatality. And are Network Rail responding quick enough?
Yeah, I think they are as quickly as reasonably practicable. We had these drafted and ready before Margam. We had been working on getting the evidence together to issue improvement notice for 18 months before, because the previous initiatives, plan and delivery of safe work, and the revised 019 standard from our perspective didn't seem to be having the impact. So we did 18 months work to gain the evidence to put two what we thought were quite powerful improvement notices on Network Rail. One to do with the use of technology, possibly, and the other one about planning and access. They have responded to that by putting together a very significant safety task force, which has components in each of the routes or the regions, and they all have their own plans. And we're seeing a reduction in red zone working since then, quite significant reduction. We're also seeing implementation of technology that's starting to take place to help reduce the number of unassisted lookout protection, which we basically want to see reduced to a very, very, very low level going forward, and so do they. So it's got the money behind it, and it seems to, it's certainly got the senior executive team behind it, and it's being monitored by and led by a very capable individual, actually, who's doing a great job. But it is going to be a long haul, because it is very much about hearts and minds as well.
I think that's interesting, because that's one of our subjects tomorrow on track safety, which will be covered in some detail. On question on climate change, given the government's pursuit of zero diesel and zero even petrol cars, with HS2, are there any plans with HS2 to look at the new technology and rather than waiting, making sure that it's actually being pursued very vigorously in the same way that the road traffic is?
Well, I think Scotland's already issued its decarbonisation strategy for its railways, and I believe the department will be doing so soon. But I think, you know, we need to get the electrification right in terms of the way in which it's implemented. Need to make it cost effective. You know, the Rail Industry Association has shown through its work how that can be done. So we need to have, and we need to do it in a sort of measured and managed way, in my view. Not rush at it and overstretch the resources, so that it's done in a sort of it's done in a structured way which keeps the skill base there. You know, we stopped doing electrification for a large number of years, and then went and did a lot in a short space of time and got into trouble, basically. So we need to do it in that sort of planned and managed way, because otherwise we won't do it as well as we could do, and that's some of the experience we've had in recent years as well.
I've got another question, but I think it's another one that we may have answered, is what mental health initiatives are currently in place to support staff during this period? I think that's... Yeah,
well, I think one of the things that is now the industry has really sort of picked up on and has got a lot in place, but it can still be more, is mental health first aiders. So knowing where those are in your organisation, making sure that all organisations have got them. You know, that's a helping hand. We've got them inside ORR, for example, and they provide a valuable help to people. There's someone you can go and talk to, and so it's but it's all of us can help each other. You know, small talk saves lives, and you know, the whole event last just over a week ago with the rail wellbeing event is a way in which we're raising awareness. You know, it's so important to raise awareness, and provide then the you know, there are slowly improvements being made in occupational health provision, which we need to build on, which Network Rail has started. So we need to keep going. It's all, you know, it's not all going to happen overnight, but it's hard work. It's a slog. We have to keep that momentum, even through the present crisis.
Well, we're getting more questions now as the confidence comes. Ian, you mentioned fatigue in your presentation. Do you think Network Rail are doing enough to manage fatigue? The updated modules provide good guidance, but the main standard refers to 13 from 14 and the use of hidden guidance, still used, although now not applicable to rail work. How do you feel Network Rail comply with the WTR, which specifies 12 shifts from 14? That's,
I think I don't know all the details, but my team are on this. You know, we have raised with Network Rail the need to do better. They have acknowledged that, and I think they've recruited somebody to help them improve as well at the centre, working for their Chief Health and Safety Officer, who comes from the airline industry. So I think they've taken what we want them to do, and I think they do need to do more, but we'll be monitoring that going forward over the next few months and year.
Okay, thank you. And there's one thing I could probably add on to one of the party presentations, some exciting developments on RM3. IOSH are part of the governance board and the training subgroup, and we are working on something coming out very shortly on the RM3 training, which our OR are supporting. So I can say that there will be some developments coming out very shortly that will be quite pleasing for our audience.
No, that's very good. And one of the things that's been really chuffed me in a way is that the way the industry has joined in, and the professionals like IOSH, to making it better, but also helping to roll it out even further. Because something like that, I think, has been a real success story for the industry over the last 10 years.
Okay, I don't think I have any more questions coming through. All I can now do is say thank you very much, Ian, for a superb overview of the challenges in the rail industry, and to our guests and members. Hopefully you can tune into the next webinars where most of these questions will be answered in even more detail with the specialists coming through. But thank you very much, Ian. That was a really good introduction and opening to our first virtual seminar. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, and I hope the rest is really successful, and I'm really pleased that IOSH have put this all together in these circumstances. It's really pleasing to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you.